Welcome to the Robinhood Capitalists. I'm your host, DJ Flores. With me, of course, my coach and mentor, Coach Stacy V. Coach, another week, another weekend. How was your weekend?
Pretty chill. So the last few, there's been things going on and holidays and everything else. So it was good to kind of get just one that was sort of laid back and not too much. Our little small town of Currituck here had our Christmas parade and tree lighting Friday night. So that's always fun. Um, you get 62 floats, you get 20 plus antique tractors and lots of fun stuff at the Currituck Christmas parade. But that was fun. So how about you? What's going on in your world?
I love it, man. This is like my favorite time. My mom's big Christmas. Mom, if you're listening, thank you. But I love Christmas obviously because of her. But so this time of the year, there's special things that she did with us always. We'd go so downtown Cleveland, they'd have the lighting of the tree, or downtown the square, and there was this whole big thing. And so we kept that going. And even one year, my brother got lost, and Santa had him up on stage, which was crazy. But yeah, pretty nuts. But so lots of stories through that. But it was crazy. So we got to Maggie unfortunately had to work, but I seen that town center had a lighting. I just happened to click interested on Facebook, and it came up, and me and the kids had nothing to do, so I was like, hey, let's go do this. And so it's so funny. My Oakley, who made her obviously her appearance last week on the show,
World
they
premiere.
world premiere. She's now famous. But she she was like, Dad, the Grinch is gonna be there. I'm like, it didn't say anything about the Grinch. That's only an Ohio thing because the Grinch was a big. There was this guy who I swear he looked just like Jim Carrey from the Grinch, and played it really well. And so they would have him at events, and she thought he was going to be there because she just loves the Grinch. I don't know why. And he wasn't. I was like, I don't think he's going to be there. Sure enough, this local lawyer. Shout out to I don't he didn't give his name. I know he was a lawyer. His the front license plate said lawyer and certain things, and I talked to him a little bit, but he shows up in this decked out car that he framed in wood to look like a sleigh. I should have shared that picture. Darn. But uh, and he literally showed, and he's the Grinch. He was the Grinch, and he just took pictures. He wasn't planned, so it was kind of chaos. So
Yeah.
like people were just forcing their way out there with kids, and it was kind of nuts. And so my kids were not that way, so they laid back. So we just kind of enjoyed like the craziness for a little bit, and then they did finally get out there. But it made her day. I was like, oh my god, the Grinch! How did the Grinch show up? And so yeah, it was perfect. But yeah, that's
No,
what we got to do really, and that made my weekend honestly.
I wish I'd have got her. I wish I'd have got you down here because it was movie themes for the floats. So there must have been like 50 or 60 Grinches, man. There was Grinches everywhere.
No way. She loves the Grinch. I have no idea why. It scares the crap out of her. I don't know if that's why she loves it, but maybe she's trying to play that reverse idea. Hey, I love you. Don't scare me. Um,
There,
maybe.
there was one on one of the. He was on one of the big trucks, but he had a fishing rod with candy on it, and so he was, acting like the kids could get candy but taking it away, which was pretty funny.
Oh my God, that's so funny and that's so Grinch-like. Well played, sir. Well played. But well, Coach, I want to get into this. I want to stick to time a little bit more. We're going to try to get this a little more rolling smoothly. So I will try to keep us focused. But so I want to tease before we get the intro music going. But obviously, the last few weeks we've gotten to share a little. I talked about the Club Kobe Jam, which was amazing to talk about. So thank you for letting me share that and get into some of those
It was
stories.
an awesome story. I love it.
Oh man. And then obviously then into my days of the regional days with the cell phone place. But now I want to get into and tease because we do have the grandfather of franchising, the and taxes joining us this month, y'all. So mark your calendars. December 19th, 4 o'clock, JTH, John Hewitt will be joining us live here and to share just what's going on with the new Loyalty Brands YouTube channel. Excited to hear about that and just what's going on with loyalty brands and stuff. So he'll share that and we'll kind of share how he connected the dots for me. And I'm going to really bait you guys for a long time because you're not going to find out more until the 19th, but really connected the dots that led me from Catholic to Mormon to no religion to, I guess they say, omnist, but really it's just the good wolf for me. So why he connected all those dots to Jesus just being the one. Ooh, I left it.
It's the season to talk about it, so let's talk.
It it is. And so yeah, but I do want to these we're gonna get into Coach your Liberty Days, the craziness of that, and just the journey of going from over 4,000 locations. Is that right?
At
Is
the
that what you
peak,
guys
yeah,
the
at our
peak?
peak, it was over 4,000 locations. I'm not sure where they are now. It dipped, and so, I'd be afraid to give a number since I'm not in the middle of it anymore, but,
Yeah.
yes, so from, uh, I don't know, 250 maybe when I started, to over 4,000 at its peak. It was a heck of a ride and lots of fun and lots of lessons learned.
Well, guys, if you want to hear some insights to that and how you grow and what that growth looks like, stay tuned.
You get one heartbeat song. Take it seriously. This is your masterpiece. Don't forget to dream and taste the colors in the air you breathe. It's your masterpiece. Go ahead and feel it all. Don't stop till it is beautiful. Don't stop till it is beautiful. Don't stop till it is beautiful.
All right. And coach, I got to tell you, so I got this now. We got to throw this up, but our mission, obviously, here at the Robinhood Capitalists is helping 10,000 families create heaven on earth. And that's by doing what you love with who you love. And coach, you shared this with me, Wayne Dyer. This quote is amazing. Heaven on earth is a choice you must make, not a place you must find. And we here basically just want to help you make that choice. We want to help that be the choice for you. So, coach, I want to get into obviously Liberty Days. So you started at 250. And now your role was different in the beginning, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I was kind of at a transition. I knew I wanted something more. I didn't know what it was. I had a job right out of college with a startup computer company. I loved it. I loved the people. I traveled around. I was right off the bat. I was speaking and teaching and sales and installation. I mean, it was. I was literally number 19 of this company and traveling to Australia and Hawaii and all over the U.S. and leading these discussions and trainings. And I was like 22 years old, 23 years old. So it was really fun. But it was a startup, and there wasn't a lot of money. There really wasn't a lot of benefits. And I had a lot of people chirping in my ear like you get. It's like, man, they're taking advantage of you. You should do something different, blah, blah, blah. And I'm making this over here, and you're just getting robbed. And I listened, and I kind of quit and chased a whole different set of things for a while that turned out to be, and obviously in the long run, it all worked out. But there was a period of time there where I was just chasing money and for the sake of money and not chasing purpose. And so I was in that stage show while I was just trying to figure out, well, man, I know there's something more. I don't know what that more is. And I took a chance. I saw this little company called Liberty, and I didn't know much about them. I didn't really know anything much about them at all because it was brand new, so nobody did. And back then, this is 2001, November or so, 2001, and internet was a lot different. So you could do your search, but you'd be lucky to find a page or a sentence or two about it. And so pretty much all I could find was the name John Hewitt, and that kept coming back up. And so when I went to the new home office and met with a few folks there, man, it was such an extreme growth period already. You walk in the door, there was boxes everywhere. They say we're going to do an interview in the library, and I go to this room. There's not a book in it. It's just chairs and a table. It's the weirdest library ever. And then the interview was just like really quick. We've talked about my buddy Tom Fox. He owns the restaurant there in Norfolk.
Yes.
He's the
Shout
one
out,
that
Fox.
he's the one that did my interview, and he asked like 3 questions. And that was about it. And we're talking, guerrilla marketing was a big thing for Liberty even that early. And so I come expecting a tax and accounting feel, I was expecting suits and ties. And, John, he's not a suit and tie kind of a guy. He's a business casual, wear shorts and a logoed shirt, and you're good. And so I'm seeing all this. And when my wife, she's asked me, what'd you think? And I was like, well, I don't even know if this is a real thing or not. And it was just bizarre, everything that I saw. But then, I started to find out more about John and his background and his vision for Liberty becoming number one. And it was a compelling vision. I saw that it could be something that I could take a part of. I wanted to learn more about franchising and entrepreneurship, and it provided all those things. And so I took a chance. I took a huge pay cut, and not even a full time. I started with a seasonal gig just because I knew I'm a pretty confident guy. I knew if I could get my foot in my door, they'd have a hard time getting me out. And so I just got that foot in the door, and 20 years later found my way out.
I love it, man. I love that. I didn't know all that backstory. So okay, so now you get in. What did you start at Liberty? Because you started was it IT?
Yeah. So in college, that was my whole thing was technology. And when I worked for that computer company, that's what it was. I was tech support, installation, and for a long time, well, it was just a short time because I didn't stay at that company long enough to call it a long time. But for a while there, I was kind of like the translator. So I would go on sales calls and be the intermediary between the technical group and the sales group because I could do both. But a lot of the time I was going out and just training people how to use our systems. We sold HVAC computerized systems and things like that, and preventive maintenance systems. And so we basically dealt with schools, colleges, and universities, and maintenance systems, software.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so the background was, and I had some, a little bit of coding background, which coding back then was a whole lot different than what it is now. The languages it's kind of like, Latin and Greek now, but so I had some of that I brought in. And so the first thing I did for Liberty was tech support. And so, I did a short training where we learned how to set up computers for tax businesses, which, my politics. I'm a hardcore, Hyatt. I'm von Mises. I'm Peterson. I'm Thomas Sowell. I think taxes are a bane on society. Taxation is theft. So I had to come to grips with going to a tax company, but I figured that on the business side, it would be all right. And so I went through a short training on how to set up systems, and then immediately hit the road and traveled to Texas. And during that year, I traveled several different places, but Texas and the maritime provinces of Canada were the two probably biggest trips I took back then. And so that was a lot of fun and a lot of learning. And when I came back, the opportunity was, I want to learn how this system works, and I want to learn how to run one of these franchises. And so I agreed to go to work for a franchisee as well. So I was doing kind of double duty at corporate and in the franchise side. Are you still there, DJ, or did I lose you?
Oh, sorry, dropped off. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
I didn't know if I was still alive or not. That was kind of weird.
Sorry about that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So I did a couple. From day one was traveling, and then came back and went to work with a franchisee as well, just so I could learn the system. It was trial by fire in a lot of ways. It was still very new. Some of the lessons that John had said that he learned, because if you will learn more about his background on the 19th, but he had sold Jackson Hewitt, and it was like $500 million that the company sold for. And so this was the restart. And so Liberty actually started in Canada. That he bought UNR Tax Depot was 126 tax locations in Canada. And so I think it was 1999 was when the first stores actually opened in the U.S. because of his non-compete. And the first stores were in Ohio.
Yeah, Columbus, right?
Columbus was the first places that he opened those stores. And so by the time I came along, we were in Columbus, we were in Atlanta because the non-compete had gone away. We had some large presence in Seattle. And obviously, we're expanding big time into Texas, which is where I took a lot of my trips to, and some other parts of the country, and really a lot of growth in Hampton Roads. And so, again, it was kind of flying. But one of the things he said he learned at Jackson Hewitt was their growth outpaced their support system. And so he was building a bigger support system up front to support the growth that he felt confident that he knew he would get. And so that was fortunate for me because I was part of that growth expansion.
And that makes a lot of sense because he has such a team, and that's one of the things like I learned right away from being around John. He, like Martha and Mary Jane, Jack. I mean, some of these people he had, Bob. He has some amazing people that. Like that's the first thing I picked up was like, man, that's when you have a solid group of people, that's really what can do what you guys were able to do there. And it's crazy. So
yes, and so I didn't know anything about taxes at all. Jennifer had done our taxes a few times. We had paid somebody to do it a few times. Didn't know the first thing. And so when I went to work with a franchisee, and some of you entrepreneurs out here might get a kick out of this story, but the franchisee was absentee owner, and I agreed to go work to do computer IT processing type work, not tax work. And the day I get there, everybody had quit. I don't know what had happened. I don't know the backstory of what made them angry, but the entire office had just quit. And so I was left. I was the most experienced person in the store, and I didn't know how to do a tax return. And so what we did is we brought in a really, really experienced good tax preparer, and we got some other resources from local of really good tax folks. But what that led to is I kind of co-managed that location, and we ended up out of 250 or 300 stores being the third best store in the whole system. But it was completely trial by fire. It was amazing. There was like 20-hour work days. There was nights I slept in the office.
I'm sure there's a lot of startups and solopreneurs that know that pain right now. And listen, y'all, that's where you got to start. That's where it all starts.
Yeah, Margaret, who was the lady that came in to run the tax side, and she knew that if she kept enough caffeine and candy in the office, I could stay up all night. So there was lots of caffeine and candy. But Jennifer and the kids would literally come to the office and like have picnic lunches because there was a lot of times through that first peak that I just wasn't going home. And because it was an hour commute each way. You know where I
know it.
And so it was. I just can't tell you how much I learned about dealing with people, and because I was helping with the tech support at corporate too, and so pretty quickly after that, I became director of several different departments, and again, you just learn so much, and seeing how the business side of the business actually worked, and if there's no other way that I could have gotten into it and jumped in with both feet that way than the way that I did. And I don't, because I could have bought the franchise. I could have done all the things. I don't think I could have learned as much as I did being in both worlds at the same time and putting that kind of effort into it.
I agree. Coming from, prior to even being involved in any of that world, I was only the franchisee side, but usually not even a system like John does with Liberty and Jackson Hewitt and now with Loyalty. I mean, these are some were not even true franchises, really, just people saying it's a franchise.
Yes. Now, tech, I said tech was different. Listen how different it was. Offices weren't networked because that could cause a potential security threat. Internet was dial-up. Very few people had broadband at all because it was cost prohibitive and it was dial-up. So our updates were delivered, and we had a third-party tax software we'd use. Our updates were delivered. We would put them to literal floppy diskettes. It might be a series of 12 to 14. and you would go from computer to computer, and we had like 8 in that office, and so most of the time was spent just doing the daily updates with 14 floppy diskettes.
I know your pain from DJing. I DJ'd when there wasn't just a list of playlists you could make. That was the most amazing thing that ever happened to me in my brother's world. Was, oh my God, you could make a playlist that you don't do anything. You just push a button. There were CDs. We had hundreds, if not thousands, of CDs with songs. Unbelievable. Yeah, you'd have these boxes full. Yeah, that's oh yeah, that sounds just like
And
that.
you know how John will tell you that franchisees never do everything he tells them to do? Along those lines, on the technology side, there were a few secret network offices out there because it was so easy to share a drive and do the update in 2 minutes versus do it in 2
Yeah,
hours.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a long process. So now you before we go into the more growth, you said when you took over that first location, they all quit. How long did it take before you built that office back? Because then you were co-managing. But what happened to that? And you said it went from two. Where was it at? Obviously, if they all quit, I mean, it's it's nothing. But where where were they at
Yeah.
that point in, like, I guess, growth, and what really changed it? Obviously, you co-managing it,
So
but
there
what
was
helped do that
uh,
so fast?
so there was a general manager, and that was kind of running the show. So as an absentee franchisee, a lot of times you pick your leadership team, and they become the de facto face of the company. And as there was a disagreement between the owner and the general manager, and
Mm,
the general manager had enough sway with the key people that they took the key people. And when I say everybody, there were some folks left that had some experience, but they weren't the key
yeah,
people. And so what we had to do is we brought in some other key people that already had the experience that we needed, that knew the tax system the way they needed to know it. And from that point forward, because with things being software based, it was my job just to try to teach them the software side of the ones that needed to get a little more up to speed on that.
now with the pulling people, were they other franchisees because of the franchise system, or is that yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, other franchisees, and John had a pretty good network of folks too. So he got us some help from corporate, because with corporate being that close, we were able to pull some other help other than just me from the corporate office. And so we had some advantages being where we were, especially if that would have been in another state with technology the way it was. Again, it would be tough,
Yeah.
because from a tech support side, if one of our franchisees got in a bind, we would hop on a plane and fly to them to fix it, because there was no broadband,
Wow.
no ability to do remote tech support. And so we would just randomly fly to wherever. And John's always been good about, if a franchisee got in a bind and asked for help, he would give help. And
I've he-
so during the
I've heard some
season,
of the stories.
during the season, we had one franchisee who had a parent pass away, and they didn't feel good about leaving the store. They were going to shut it down. He went, "No, you're not. We're going to run it for you." So I flew and spent a week in Texas running a store because there was a death in somebody's family. And so there was lots of things like that we would do, and every one of those things for me was just another chance to learn a different part of the
Yeah.
system and see something different. It was, I mean, the learning was
Oh, I
incredible.
love it. I love it. So now when you're so when did you start the training and doing that, I guess that higher level with the speaking and training and the event stuff?
So it started pretty quick. So after that first season, like I said, pretty quick, they asked me to be director of a couple of different departments. So it went from a quality assurance department to the director of tech support. And as director of tech support, there's a few things that I knew, systems that we needed. And so over the next couple of years, number one, our franchisees, they didn't have a good technical background. We had a lot of folks that didn't know anything about technology.
Yeah.
So I designed a week-long technical training, and then we took that on the road. And so I would teach, it was 4 or 5 days of all technology. And since things were a little more difficult back then, I was literally taking computers, and we would take them apart, show them how to add memory to a motherboard, and do some things that you had to do back then. And so that was a lot of fun. So that was the first thing. So right off the bat in the summer of 2001, I was already doing some of the trainings and things. And then, some of the systems that we still had to build out as a support organization. We didn't really have a great tracking system for issues. We didn't really have a great knowledge base. Things like WebEx were brand new at that point and just starting to get popular. So, so I started to integrate and build some of those things out. I got a contract with a company called Right Now Technologies. It was a great knowledge base tracking, issue tracking system. And I built that out and then started doing like little recorded trainings through WebEx and pushing those out as well.
No kidding. Okay. So now when you were training the new franchisees, what is the common thing or the common like mistakes that anybody who might be a new business owner that they're like, okay, why is this not working? They said start a business, it'd be fun. What is the common things that you maybe seen that were like quick fixes that could help or really change? Because again, for that fast of growth, obviously there were easy fixes, or at least was it just spotting the right people or putting the right people in place?
It's a combination of all of that. It's a little bit of everything. The right people obviously helps, because if you got a winner, winners win. That's what they do. And so if you can fill your bus with a team of winners, you're in pretty good shape. And so it's a little bit of all of that. So what happened is after a couple of years of good success in tech support, like we grew. I want to say we added 400 locations net in 1 year. And that was when I had implemented this new tracking system and knowledge bases and all of that. And so we increased that many stores, and the issues that we handled stayed flat because we had the resources and things there that helped control it. So that was a pretty good success. And around that same time, the director of training position came open, and I was talking to John about that. And that was one of the first, I shouldn't say first, but one of the bigger lessons that he taught me was in that transition. I was like, so I understand how to win at tech support. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know the definition of winning. If I become director of training, how do I know if I'm winning or losing? And he said, his answer was great. He says, we have developed and created the greatest culture in the industry by far. And he asked me a few questions. He goes, now, why do you think the unbeatable Sears was beaten? Do you think that Sears had more intelligent people than Walmart? And I was like, no. Did they have better looking people than Walmart? No. Walmart had culture when they started. Sam Walton drove the culture of Walmart, because at one point it was a destination place people wanted to work. It was a good place. They had the anytime, anywhere, if you want something returned, we'll return it. Just, we want to make you happy, right? That it was a different place, but it was the culture. And he said, if you can take the culture that we've developed here at corporate and spread it all across to all of our stores in North America, then you've been a successful training director. And so I took that to heart and took the position, and that's when I started training. Now, as far as what do people kind of miss, if you're joining a franchise system, when you go to that first training, the things that they're telling you are the best practices. The reason you're being told to do this at this time, at this date, is because we know that that's what works. And so the first thing that people do wrong is they question and start doing their own thing. And right off the bat, and I'm as guilty with Focal Point as anybody could ever see, because I came in with my own set of plans. I know what I'm doing. I've been coaching for a long time, so I'm not pointing fingers. I'm pointing them at me too. But that's the big thing. And in a seasonal business like taxes, it's even more important, because you've got about this much time to make it. And so in that system, it would say you need to have this done by this date. Well, that wasn't we hope you get it done by this date. This was, if you want to be successful, you damn well better have it done by this date.
Yeah.
And so that's the big thing. People look at it and they kind of pick what they like, and, well, I don't really like that one. And they start questioning almost right off the bat.
So I got a tricky question, but maybe, how do they know before the training where they're, what that looks like, or what they're asking of, what I mean, of them to grow? Like, how do they know what that experience is going to be?
So for any franchisor, there's a discovery process that they'll take a new prospect through. And that discovery process, it includes talking to franchise development reps. It might include, we've talked to, franchise consultants on our
Yeah.
show. It might include a consultant like that, but there's a series that people go through. And most franchisors will have a discovery day where people come in to, it used to be exclusively, they would come into the home office of the franchisor. Now, a lot of folks are doing them Zoom-based discovery days. But through that process, they learn a lot. So by the time the initial training comes in, for most franchisors, what that really is a handoff from the development team to the training team, and then the training team has the handoff to the operations team. And so they already knew a good bit about what they needed to do. There was some pre-work that they would do before they got to class. And then what I tried to do with all of our classes was bring in representatives. So we covered each of the different departments and each of the different areas with the experts that they needed to talk to. And so they had a pretty good starting point when they got to me. And then the goal was that they could walk out and know enough to get out there and do some damage in their own market.
Now, how did you get them out of their own way for the ones who refused or didn't like certain things that you guys knew worked? Was there I mean,
So some you don't. So some are going to, because it's there's a curve, and there's going to always be some that are going to succeed no matter what happens to them, no matter what you do. We talk about my buddy Andy Banker at Franchoice. His first year when he came through, I led his training. He didn't stand out in training, even though he's one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. But he left in his first year. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
really?
He started out strong. He got a great location that they were going to open up in. He had all of his classes lined up. He got all of his technology lined up. And right when it was time to run, he had his best employee, one really key employee. And right when it was time to start everything up, there was an ice storm that came in. And his best employee, the one person that was going to really help him, slipped, fell, and caused serious damage and was out for an extended time.
Oh
So now he doesn't. And he couldn't start class, so his hiring process was delayed, right? So he sets everything another week off, and it's going to put him a week off, and another ice storm hits. So this time he goes into this office that he's got everything set up in, and when it gets below zero for an extended period of time, occasionally pipes might freeze. His entire office was flooded. The whole thing was completely unusable. He had to find a secondary location, and this is already in the middle of January.
This story. Is this Liberty? Is this okay?
Yeah,
I think I heard a little bit.
He had to find right in the middle of the season. He's having to find another location. He's having to go through all this. He's still trying to find people to train and hire to get up to speed. And he still finished that year among the top in the entire industry, so much so that the IFA gave him an award for his perseverance as a business owner. And I asked him, because I flat out, I said, dude, he came to convention. I said, dude, I got to know the story. I said, if everything would have happened to me that happened to you, I'd have been curled up on the couch going, you know what? The good Lord is telling me this ain't for me.
How many sides got him done? Okay, I'm sorry.
I get it. I'm gonna walk away. I said, so what did you do? He says, well, if it's set on the calendar to get 10,000 coupons out during the week, I got them out. And I said, but you didn't even have anywhere for them to come in to do taxes. He went, I'd have figured it out.
Yes.
He said,
good for you, Andy.
He says, I knew that if I built the right momentum, once I got everything in place, it would be in place, and we would go fine. And so he just kept following the plan, even when everything around him was falling apart. And of all the lessons I learned through the years at Liberty, that persistence might be the number one thing I ever learned in 20 years of being there.
I love that. Shout out to Andy, man. So we have to have him on next year, Andy. Market Tuesday. We need to have you on. I know we've talked about him a few times, especially when we had Patrick on, and
yeah, he had a great career at Liberty, and now he's a great career with Franchoice. He was part of my training team for a while, so we got to travel together. Just the greatest guy that you'll ever meet. But yeah, it's his father-in-law that taught me Kansas City barbecue. I'm a competition on the Kansas City. It's his father-in-law on Lake of the Ozarks that taught me the skills.
Oh my goodness! Look at that. Well,
Yeah, when we won our first rib championship, I flew myself and my son out to Skip's house to cook our ribs for him as homage and thanks for him teaching us how to do it.
I love that story, Coach. I love that. So before we go back into Liberty stories and days, I do want to. Obviously, we've talked a lot about what are we doing. What's the plan for 2024? Where's this going? We have a lot of things in the works, but one thing we do know for sure is we do. You with the rights to the Think and Grow Rich training, we want to get that out there and going. And so as we've been talking about that and offering that for people to really jumpstart, we want it to be a boost to really mindset and everything to get you in the right direction for 2024. So if you feel like this year's been a struggle, a lull, something's there, and you're just wanting more, like, that's really what we're trying to do. I know you had mentioned that back in the day we used to be you used to be able to give it free something with the John Maxwell, so there has to be a little fee. But again, we just want this to be something that helps you for 13 weeks kind of get in the right mindset to start 2024 off with a bang and get the right
And
money.
this is through a partnership that I created with Paul Martinelli and a company called Empowered Living. And the the book obviously is great. It's been around since the 30s, 1930s. It's been around for a long time. And with the way this is set up, I promise you this will kick off 2024 for any of us better than anything you can possibly do. So this is a great program.
Honestly, that's what I'm most excited about. It's just being a part of it, and because I know what it will do. Again, just since we've been talking about it, I ended up, and it's crazy. So B&I today had a younger kid, actually from Fremont, Ohio. As crazy as that is, we're in Virginia Beach, y'all. He's like, he sees my jacket, he says, "Boo." I said, "What?" I said, who are you? What do you mean, boo? Who do you like? Who are you a fan of? He said, the Steelers. I said, what? I said, where are you from? He said, Fremont, Ohio. I said, you traders on the east side of Ohio, you all went to the Steelers. Why? But anyways, it was amazing to meet him here in Virginia Beach at BNI. So the power of networking, y'all. I can't emphasize that enough. But just this story, good kid. He's actually wants to do his thing. Very similar to Bo. Just so thank you for your service, obviously. But he, from the Navy and loved Virginia Beach. Anybody in the Navy, I guess they do end up at some point here. He ended up here. That's why I stayed here and loved it. But so
Yeah, we got quite a few down here too.
I got to meet him, and
Good.
he says to me and this met a younger kid as well from Italy. He's only been here 10 years. From Italy, his parents from here came here for work for his dad, but engineering or something. But he says, "Think and Grow Rich," and I'm like, hold on. Why are you talking about that? And so like, and he's like, that book changed my life. And then he said, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I said, oh my goodness, okay, I love you already, like, and want to know more. And so that's found out Fremont, Ohio, to really sum it in a nutshell. But Think and Grow Rich, since we've been talking about that, I ended up finding this Earl Nightingale recording, and it's a recording on YouTube. But so look it up if y'all like anything about Think and Grow Rich or want anything more that really will give you more depth to it, because his breakdown is he's just breaking. So it's Earl Nightingale's breakdown of Think and Grow Rich, his version of it that was made into a record that they now have on YouTube. And he's breaking.
We might have to describe what a record is.
Yeah. He's breaking down how he used a word in this recording, and Coach, you might know what this means. I didn't know what this word meant, but he basically, I know what he's saying. He's saying, like, breaking down where you can basically move the needle to jump from lesson to lesson or principle to principle. But he says a word I've never heard. So I know it's about a record, and something with whatever they did to create that, so you can do that. But that's even what you're talking about. I don't know totally. Records were at the end of my day, even. So yeah, I know what records are. I've seen a lot of record players and had them, but yeah, it's not something that I went listening to Earl Nightingale's things.
I'm glad you didn't go further with that. I thought I was about to get a vocabulary test, and I wasn't
Oh no,
prepared.
no, no,
I
no,
didn't
no test.
study.
No, I can't even remember the word. That's how like I've never really heard the word. But it was crazy and it was exciting because I knew from Think and Grow Rich was I first ran into that book a long time ago with this whole Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, everything's just going to lead at some point there. And and so I found it there, but it was then outwitting the devil and hearing that version and the whole backstory of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill is the whole is Ohio. I think even Cleveland. That whole thing and that from Outwitting the Devil. But then hearing Napoleon Hill at the end of this record was like, okay, this is gold. To get to hear him talking and then really breaking down Earl Nightingale, it's like, okay, this is amazing. But the three things, and I wanted to leave this for everybody, the three things Napoleon Hill says, and is the advice, and is the gold of Think and Grow Rich, according to Napoleon Hill. These are his words, is number one, condition your subconscious. Coach, we talk about that all the time. We're obsessed with that.
Yeah.
Biology believes.
Takes emotion, it takes repetition, it takes intention. But if we don't engage the most powerful part of our brain, we're going to struggle. And so, yeah, that's a key.
Number two, form a mastermind of a group of two or more like-minded with the same goal that you can talk about. Things like this.
And that's exactly what this study is all about. Is we want to get folks together. We want to talk through these ideas. That there'll be opportunities where we're teaching and telling what we get from the book. There'll be opportunities for Q&A. So it's going to combine all the elements so that we can all learn together.
And then number three, which I think is the gold. So obviously, last but not least, and this is if anybody wants advice, just to skyrocket or give a little better. See a little boost in customer retention, customer service, and customer as a whole. Take number three to heart. Render more and better service or product without asking for more. Don't ask more, just give more. And watch what happens.
Boy, that one kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? And
Right? I was like,
pretty much every episode we've had for all 46 or whatever it is now, that comes, all of these things come up. We're not even trying to channel Napoleon Hill, but all of these things are constantly coming up for
and it's
success.
repeating it, guys. It's just what's there, and it's like it's the simple things, and that's what I think I loved most about John. He really likes to make things very simple. And at least for me, he made things very simple. Like I understood, and so like, and it's status quo. It's don't get stuck. There's the comfort zone. There's always pushing. He had his principles, and they were. It was always, you always knew, and it's that was one thing that stuck with me from John was the simple things. The simple things.
Mm.
It's the simple things that people miss. Always. Always. Because they want to make it up.
Yeah, we're always making things harder than they have to be.
Yeah. And that's so we just want to simplify it. So yeah, again, I'm excited about it. I can't wait to just get, especially after hearing this. I've now taken it to heart that I've listened. So Earl Nightingale, because he was big on the subconscious. So the way to get it into your subconscious is listening to it while you're falling to sleep, or before you go to sleep, or while you're sleeping. Which shout out Gerard of Gerard Marketing. He told me he was doing that with his son since he was 2. And while he was sleeping, he had him listening to Think and Grow Rich. I was like, yes, you are my idol. And now I'm doing that for my kids. So thank you. And I never knew while I was listening to. I was listening to, and you shared the story of your dad having always this stuff on, and you just,
Yeah, Earl Nightingale was part of the
yeah,
playlist too.
subliminally taking it in. And I didn't notice that until my kids were like, okay, Dad, enough with the motivation stuff, enough with this. And I'm like, hold on, you're listening? And then they would say certain things. I'm like, whoa, you're even remembering. Okay, I'm not stopping. So like they don't know it, but most of the time I listen to it for them. I already have heard that a billion times. It was just I wanted them to subliminally take it in because it really does work. So, and Earl Nightingale says in the end of it, listen to this every night when you go to bed, and I'm like, okay, let's soak that in for a little bit. So yeah, I fell asleep to that last night. Yeah.
So now I love to read and read quite a bit. Obviously, as a kid, if it wasn't sports, I didn't want to read anything about it. But one of the first books that wasn't the Bible that I remember, that especially because my mom would read with me all the time, but dad, not as much. And so other than the Bible, the first book I remember really getting from him was a Zig Ziglar. It was See You at the Top.
Yes. So you're at the top. So my first Zig, I don't know if I have it over there. Yeah, Selling 101. I have it at the top. It was a tiny little. That was the first book I ever. I feel ashamed to say this honestly. But listen, school was for me. It didn't make sense. I was that person, and but so like I didn't want to read. Like it was easier to just figure out what I needed to know, study the things, and I could remember a lot and just do what I needed to do. So I never actually read a full book in school my whole life. Zig Ziglar's Selling 101 was the first book I actually read the whole thing because I wanted to read it. But honestly, I think I learned from Jim Quick. I just need to read faster, and so learning to read faster was a big thing. But I read
Yeah.
really slow, so
Audible doesn't hurt these
and
days
obviously,
either.
yeah, Audible, I soak it in like it's an IV. It's just like cheating in IVs. It's crazy. But yeah, same thing. But so back to Liberty. I do want to go back to a little bit of that. So now it's the crazy day. So let's go to that. So now you're doing the events. It's what? So you said 400 offices in 1 year. Well,
Yeah, and that's a rounded number, so it give or take, but that was pretty close in that year that I remember when we switched and implemented the new knowledge base and tracking system, because we had such good results. I was in trade publications and things, talking about the system, the company that we partnered with to build the system. I got invited to speak at their conference in. I went to Bozeman, Montana for one, and to San Francisco for another for them. And so it was really successful with what we did. And then after that was when I started traveling and doing the trainings. And so we would do, starting in we would have one in March or April that was kind of a new training, but that was kind of lightly attended because um, we would, tax season still going
mhm.
on. So we would start training season in earnest around convention time. So that was around June. But, from June, July, August, we would have at least one, and we were having anywhere from 50 to our biggest was 150 new franchisees per training.
Wow,
And in order to keep it so that people could learn,
wow,
we had a rule that no more than 40. If we had more than 40, I had to split it into two groups. And so we generally, for quite a few years, we were always doing doubles, which meant we would have two different classes going simultaneously, and the instructors were changing classrooms. And then we did one in San Diego. Occasionally, we would go out of Virginia Beach for those. We did one in San Diego. I had like 75 people, so had rented the place. We knew it was going to be close, and like the week before, 2 weeks before, it just started blowing up. We ended up with so many people. I had to rent an event tent because the hotel didn't have a space big enough for everybody
no
at the combined
way,
session.
really?
So we ended up like it was almost 150 at that one, and so it was crazy. So we were doing those, and plus we were doing intermediate trainings, we were doing advanced trainings. The tax department handled the actual tax training, but my group would set up the logistics behind it to do the tax training. During starting after Thanksgiving, we would start to do update trainings, which back then, and now it's all virtual, but back then I would have teams, probably 15 different teams or 10 different teams of two that I would fly all
Wow,
around to handle
really?
those in person. Yeah. And so for a good section of time, I was spending, half the year at hotel rooms in different places, traveling, doing trainings and speaking and helping. And during tax season is not training season, right?
Yeah.
So it was either if you're a franchisee, you go back to your franchise. If you're not, you do something for corporate, for operations. And so I did a lot of tax season travel, and so I was on a podcast just last week. It's the KB article, and it's Chad Brown and Kyle Kensler. And Kyle's from North Dakota. He's like, "You're the only person from corporate that would ever come to my store that came and made that drive up into Williston, North Dakota." And I love those trips because I got to see the country and I got to meet a lot of folks.
How
And
is North Dakota? Because I probably will never go there either. But
man, I loved it. I loved it. The oil boom was, I haven't been in a long time, but back then the oil boom was in full effect and they were just building out the infrastructure. And so a lot of the roads, because I traveled to like 6 different cities in North Dakota, and it was all driving. And the big trucks were, I thought they were going to just kill me. So that part was frightening. There was just big trucks everywhere and snow and ice and all of
well,
that
that's what
sort
I
of
was
thing.
gonna. I mean, I know from my freight days. I mean, a lot of my drivers, I had stuff going a lot to Washington and stuff. So there's that stretch, like that's when winter season comes. Like that's terrible. Like it's not good. But it's a very traveled for semis and stuff. Like I know it's big.
Somehow I would get lucky, and when, because you're going through different passes, because I would go from Washington to Idaho to Wyoming, Montana. I was in all these different places, and and you go over these passes, and you got all the warnings. You got to have chains. You got to have this. You got to have that. And somehow I would get right in that little window of time where just any old car could get through, and I would get through. But I mean, I've seen every kind of wildlife you can imagine. I've been some of the states I went to without Liberty, but I've been to all 50 states, and a lot of them were with Liberty. And I want to say 6 different Canadian provinces as well. And so you get to meet a ton of people. You get to learn how entrepreneurs think. You get to see how they operate. I generally didn't tell people I was coming, because if you tell people you're coming, you'll see exactly what you're supposed
Yeah,
to see. If you just show up, you see how they really live. And so for the most part, I would pop in on
good
people.
for you.
And I was all over our intranet. So they were seeing me on videos and things. So like whoever was handling reception duties, I'd walk in the door and they would go, "Do I know you?"
It's like Undercover Boss. Have you ever seen those? They seen you somewhere one time. Like, hold on, your face looks really familiar.
Was I just watching you at my training I just went through? I was like, "Yeah, that's me."
That's so funny. That's awesome. That is awesome. Oh man. Well, this was fun. I love hearing the stories of that. Well, obviously next week we'll have to, or Thursday we'll continue and have to keep going with more of these stories. I want to get into like the really crazy, I guess, some of the crazier things and when it was really like at the max, how that was. Because I know I've heard some crazy stories with that from John and just some of his experiences. Like, what? Wow. So yeah,
Yeah, for a good period of the time, it was just a giant party.
yeah, that's exactly what it sounded like. And so like,
But it's the old saying, nothing hurts when you're winning, right? And we were consistently winning. And when things started to slow and it started to get a little more difficult for various reasons, um, I think the thing that hurt us the most, and we'll get into this more Thursday, but we started to lose the culture. Once we started to lose the culture, it was really hard to come back from that. So we did the whiteboard with the 3 different sections that you go through as a business owner,
yep,
from the learning to the growth to decline. And we kind of lost our way at the top of that growth cycle, where we weren't diligent enough to create the new growth cycle. And we really learned the lesson from success that told us we were better than maybe we really were.
yeah. I love that you left it there. I think there's a lot. Listen, if you feel like you're having a business right now that you're there, that you're starting to lose the culture, don't lose it completely. Because, I mean, is it fair to say culture is basically like trust? It's never coming back. I mean, it's going to be a harder. It's
It's
it's it's a
tough.
hard. It's I mean, that's where any company ever lost me. I mean, once I didn't believe this, that's why this word might be on my tombstone. But I literally, once I stopped believing, you lost me completely. So like
Well,
culture
and
is
you
huge.
remember Jesse talking about his employee avatar. When you're going through that extreme growth, it gets harder to stick to your guns in hiring
Ah, yes,
that
yeah,
avatar. And so it's not only are you losing it from yourself and things that we're doing wrong, it's that we're bringing in a lot of
moving
influences that are
pieces.
dragging it
Yeah,
down.
yeah. Ah, well, we'll have to maybe set the stage of how they can work through that if they're going through those pains too. Because again, there's a lot of growing pains through this game called life, but you got to learn and live, right? And that's Coach. This is awesome. So, Coach, final thoughts, and then let's wrap this up, I guess.
Well, that was fun. These kind of discussions, I wish I'd have written more down because a lot of my memories are fuzzy on some of these things. I should have been keeping a better diary or journal throughout that whole thing. And so maybe that's another lesson I'll leave you with is whatever path you're on right now, journal, so that make sure you're learning the right lessons along the way.
Yes, I love that, Coach. And I'm gonna leave with one last thought from Earl Nightingale. So this, I obviously took some notes. But and this again was like a 30 or 40-minute video on YouTube. So check it out if you want to see it. And I'll share the link. But uh, he said everything begins with an idea, which is fact. But he says if you know what you want it strong enough, by controlling your mind, you can control your destiny here on earth. And that's really he explains also in here, and he gave a stat that I was like, whoa, that's crazy. How extreme is that? So I'm a researcher. I will research everything. But and so he said this gray matter, this that matters between those ears is 14 billion cells. Just the brain is 14 billion cells. So I was like, okay, hold on. How many are in the body then completely? If that's 14 billion, how many for a child? 17 trillion. For a woman, 28, and for a average male, 36 trillion. So there's a lot of cells that can do a lot of power. And again, the last thing, I heard this from Luke. I shared this last week. I'm going to keep sharing this. This is going to be the drum I beat. Besides, if you're feeling that pain on Sundays, or you hate Mondays, there's something in here telling you you have more. There's more inside. There's something that wants more. And listen to it. I promise. It's not steering you wrong. But Luke, highest vibration. Vibration matters. The highest vibration is authenticity. Be real. Be you. Be the real you. Try that skin on. That's why this song is the end song for. And listen to these words, but that's what it's about. Try what you really want to do. Vision that. Play that out in your mind. What you want to be, what you want to achieve. If there really is something more you want, and see how.
And then grow into it through intentional, repeated
Yes,
action.
and see how it feels. Because I promise you might just like it. But until Thursday, Coach, this was awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Again, like and subscribe if you like this, and share with a friend if you found this beneficial at all. But thanks. Thanks, Coach.
Yep. See you
See you
Thursday.
Thursday.
I'm always on the red eye. This time around, it's not even